The news of a loved one's death hits every person differently. The aftermath of that news, then, takes unique forms the world over as cultures celebrate the life and honor the death of individuals in ways often singular to their culture. So today, I'm going to tell you about the weirdest funeral customs around the world. 1. Famidihana. The Malagasy people of Madagascar perform a ritual called Famidihana in which, every 7 years or so, the bodies of their deceased are exhumed from ancestral crypts. Also known as the turning of the bones, the ritual sees the deceased re-wrapped in fresh cloth followed by a lively celebration involving music and a huge feast during which the living dance with their dead ancestors, pass on familial news to the deceased and ask for their blessings. Then, the bodies are reinterred. A way of maintaining connection between the living and the dead, Famidihana is based on the belief that the deceased do not join the afterlife until their bodies are fully decomposed and are able to communicate with the living in the interim. 2. Ghana's fantasy coffins. Originating in the Accra area around 60 years ago, the Ghana fantasy coffin phenomenon was prompted by talented carpenters, including Ataa Oko and Kane Kwe, and sees coffins crafted into elaborate, intricate designs that reflect the life and passions of the deceased, be it a fish-shaped coffin for a fisherman or beer bottle-shaped coffins for fans of ale. A number of Ghanaian fantasy coffins were included in an art exhibition Magiciens de la Terre at the Musée d'Art Moderne in Paris in 1989, and more recently fantasy coffin artist Paa Joe traveled to the UK as artist-in-residence at Nottingham's Clumber Park, where he crafted one of his trademark lion-shaped coffins. 3. Sky burials. In parts of Tibet and Mongolia, Vajrayana Buddhists practice a ritual known as Jader, or sky burial, in which the bodies of the deceased are dissected and the pieces are placed upon a mountaintop, where they are left for vultures to consume. Based on the belief that the soul leaves the body immediately after death, the tradition, in particular the feeding of remains to vultures, is seen as a last token of charity to the earth. It is an age-old ritual practiced for thousands of years, and according to Pasang Wangdu of the Tibet Academy of Social Sciences, around 80% of Tibetans today opt for a sky burial. 4. Asia's hanging coffins. Among certain ethnic groups in the Philippines, Indonesia and China, the tradition of hanging coffins has long been practiced. In Gongxian in southern Sichuan, hundreds of hanging coffins of China's Bo people, who are thought to have died out approximately 400 years ago, can be found suspended from rock faces, while in the Philippine mountain town of Sagada, the Igorot people still practice the tradition today. Many hanging coffins dot the cliff faces of the Echo Valley. The ritual is said to protect the dead from flooding, and animals in an Igorot culture is thought to grant the dead an easier passage to the afterlife. 5. Papua New Guinea's Smoke mummies. In the Menyamya region of Papua New Guinea's Morobe province, the Enga people perform a funeral tradition that involves smoke curing the bodies of their dead and suspending the mummified remains in bamboo cages from clifftops above villages. Said to be the Enga people's way of showing high respect for their departed, several smoke mummies can be seen around the settlements of Aseki and Watama, though the ritual is rarely practiced today. 6. Eating the dead in the Amazon. The Yanomami tribe in the Amazon has a very unique practice for handling their dead. After a tribe member dies, they consume their ashes as a way to keep their spirit alive in the surviving members. In their belief system, the body needs to be burned and eaten by living relatives in order to rest properly. While it might sound unappetizing, the ashes are mixed with manna to make a soup. This is a local delicacy, and the entire tribe eats some. Though we typically frown upon cannibalism in our society, the Yanomami tradition uses this practice as a way to honor the dead and their families. 7. Finger amputation in Papua New Guinea. Grief reveals itself in new ways in Papua New Guinea. We can all relate to the difficult feelings after the loss of a loved one. For the Dani tribe in Papua New Guinea, some members cut off the top of their fingers after attending a funeral. This is a tradition limited to women, and it's a way to drive away the spirits of death. While this might seem grotesque, it's a form of healing for the Dani tribe. The very real pain of losing a finger is similar to the trauma of a loss. Through a careful process, the amputation is mostly painless. This tradition continues to help people in this tribe and others throughout the world handle complex grief and loss. 8. Blindfolding in the Philippines. Across the Philippines, you'll see varied funeral and memorial traditions. Each ethnic group has its own funeral practices. One that stands out is the Benguet of northwestern Philippines. For the Benguet, it's important for their loved ones to stay close even after death. The dead are blindfolded and placed next to the entrance of the home. The dead keep guard, watching over their friends and family throughout the memorial service. In other parts of the Philippines, the dead are dressed in their best clothes and a lit cigarette is placed between their lips. Though it might sound strange, it's all about respecting the dead. 9. New Orleans jazz funerals. Being famous for their legendary jazz music, it's no surprise that in New Orleans, Louisiana, it is incorporated into their celebration of death. Many funerals in New Orleans will balance grief with joy in their jazz-infused funeral processions, which blend West African, French and African American traditions and cultures. Music may start off sorrowful but soon erupts into something more joyous and boisterous, and mourners will often dance in a cathartic way to celebrate the lift of the deceased. 10. Taiwanese funeral showgirls. As we've seen from the examples above, in many cultures it is common practice to celebrate the dead rather than mourn them. However, certain groups of people in Taiwan have taken their celebration to new levels by having showgirls stripping for the dead to appease the wandering spirits. Although it is not a common tradition throughout the nation, in fact some find it to be scandalous and disrespectful, for those who partake, it is merely a way to send the deceased off with a smile. While these funeral traditions above might sound outrageous, they're just the reality for people in these communities. It just shows how many cultures accept and welcome death as a natural part of life. Though we might approach our own death traditions differently, there might be something we could learn about the acceptance of grief, mourning, and celebrating life after death. So what do you think about funerals like this? Don't forget to leave your comment below.